What's up, everyone? I'm Joe Pomp, and this is the Joe Pomp Show. Today, we're going to be talking about Toto Wolff. He is the Mercedes Formula One team principal and CEO, and he was recently named a billionaire by Forbes. This is a massive business. They have more than 1,000 employees and do $450 million in annual revenue, and he's a part owner of the team. That's where the majority of his wealth comes from, and I think it's probably one of the most interesting business deals of the last decade in sports. So today we'll run through the details, including how he acquired the equity stake and why the value has increased so much. But before we get into the details around the deal specifically, I think it's important to understand some history and context about Mercedes-Benz in general. Now, for those that don't already know this, Mercedes has a long and complex history in motorsports. They started racing, Grand Prix racing, in the early 1900s, as early as 1905 and 1906. They started racing in the European Championships in the 1930s, and they even won Formula One World Drivers' Championships in 1954 and 1955. But then an accident happened in 1955, and everything went south. There was an accident at the 1955 Le Mans 24-hour race, where debris fell into the crowd, and 83 people died, including a Mercedes driver, and 200 plus more people were injured. It's known as one of the biggest disasters in motorsports history, and it changed the trajectory of Mercedes-Benz and motorsports in general. Why? Because Mercedes-Benz shut down its entire motorsports division for nearly 40 years after the accident. They literally didn't do anything else in motorsports after that. But then in the 1990s and early 2000s, they returned to Formula One. They started supplying engines to Formula One teams like McLaren and Braun GP. And then in 2009, as the sport continued to grow in popularity, they decided it was time to re-enter the sport. They bought the Braun GP team for $175 million, and they started racing again. But things didn't go as planned. They were investing millions and millions and millions of dollars every single year into the team, but they only won a few races, and they actually went backwards. They finished fourth in the Constructors' Championship in 2010 and 2011, and then fifth in 2012. So this is where Toto Wolff comes in. Now, for those of you that don't know, Toto Wolff was a successful investor. He was a former racing car driver. He dropped out of Vienna University and started his own venture capital firm, as well as founding a couple businesses that became publicly traded himself. So he has this financial background as a professional investor, as an entrepreneur. And he later combined those two interests to own a 16% stake in the Williams Formula One team. So he invested his own personal money into the Williams Formula One team, owned a 16% stake, became an executive director and a member of their board of directors. This was from 2009 or 2010 to 2012. Now, the Williams F1 team was not very good. They were decent. They actually won the 2012 Spanish Grand Prix, and everyone took notice, including Mercedes. So they called Toto Wolff up, and the story goes like this. They essentially asked him, hey, can you come look at our brand and our team and tell us why we aren't winning? We're spending a lot of money and we want better results. So Toto Wolff spent a week with them, and he said, look, everything could be improved. There's certainly things that can be done better from a CEO perspective, but ultimately, if you want to compete in Formula One, you need to spend more money. So that's exactly what Mercedes decided to do. They went back to Toto Wolff and they said, if we are willing to give you an unlimited budget, essentially, we're willing to spend with the top teams in Formula One, would you be willing to run this team yourself? Now, Toto initially declined because he had this equity stake in Williams, and it was a significant financial endeavor for him. But eventually, Mercedes sweetened the deal. They said, we'd be willing to give you a 30% equity stake in the team. You can buy this. They're not going to give it to you for free, but you can buy it at a significant valuation discount. The rumored price is $30 million that they let Toto Wolff buy into the team, a 30% stake. Now, that would imply a valuation of $120 million on the team. And I just told you that they bought it for $175 million. So Toto Wolff got a good deal. He got a significant valuation discount. He says yes, he buys 30% of the team. He becomes the team principal and the CEO of Mercedes Formula One. Now, everything changes from here. Toto Wolff did a bunch of different things to increase value, specifically from a management perspective. There's this funny story that he told Harvard Business School last year that he hired someone to go to the hospitality area at races, and he physically showed them how to clean the toilets himself. And he said, you sit right here. After every single person uses this toilet during race weekends, I want you to clean it exactly like this, and I want it to be perfect for our sponsors, for our partners, for our families, for everyone like that. He also made sure that the parent company in Germany started to emphasize the importance of Formula One on their brand and placed it above golf and fashion and all these other different categories that they were advertising in. So he created a driver management program with a young driver academy where they started to train drivers like George Russell and other people like that. He did a bunch of different things. But by far, the most important thing that happened was the FIA, Formula One's governing body, changed the regulations going into 2014. They mandated the new use of a power unit of a new engine, and Mercedes got it right. They built a better power unit than anyone else on the grid, and they dominated Formula One for essentially a decade. They won 8 consecutive world championships and 7 consecutive world drivers' championships, with Lewis Hamilton winning 6 and Nico Rosberg winning 1. Now, Mercedes was obviously the top brand during this time. They received about 25% of all TV time during Formula One races. And you guys know, this is billions of viewers per race that are happening all over the world. So the easiest way to explain this is that the value of the Mercedes team increased dramatically. Not only Mercedes, but also Formula One. Let's start with Mercedes. So Mercedes went from having about 650 employees during that time from a headcount perspective to about 1,200 today, or 1,300 today. So they essentially doubled their employee count. Then they also drastically increased revenues from $196 million in revenue in 2013 to $450 million in revenue today. Now, it's a drastic increase. The cost cap has also played a huge role in this because it limited their expenses. Mercedes was actually one of the only teams that was making money, that was turning a profit. Forbes released a report in 2019, and it said that Mercedes was doing an operating profit of about $22 million at the time. Now, that was the most in Formula One. Most teams were actually losing money or turning like a $5 to $10 million profit. But this is a good example of how beneficial the cost cap has been for Formula One teams. Mercedes is now doing about $75 million in annual profit. So it went from $22 million, which was top of the stack, to $75 million. So that's been hugely beneficial. And when you combine that with the growth of Formula One in general, it's been massive. So for those of you that don't know, I have a couple numbers here to just illustrate the growth of Formula One in general. Liberty Media purchased the sport, the entirety of the sport. It's like if a venture capital firm or a private equity firm went and purchased the NFL. They purchased Formula One for $4.4 billion in 2016. Viewership in the United States at the time was 538,000 viewers per race. They literally gave away the viewership, the media rights to ESPN for free. They said, just take it. We want it on TV. We want the distribution. We want people to see this race. Hopefully they tune in, and then we can maximize the value later. That viewership has doubled, more than doubled. It was 538,000 viewers per race in the United States in 2017, and now it's 1.2 million. That's an increase of 123%. The rights fee with ESPN is now $75 million per year, and Formula One's market cap has exploded. It was $4.4 billion when it was acquired in 2016, and it now trades at a market cap of $16 billion. That's a 263% increase. Again, it's been incredible. And what has that done for Mercedes and their team value? It has dramatically increased the valuation of the team. Like I said, these numbers are a little bit iffy because they're not done on an annual basis and no one knows exactly how to value these teams. But Forbes valued the Mercedes Formula One team at roughly $1 billion in 2019 when they were doing $22 million of operating profit. Now, like I said, they're doing $75 million in profit today. And my guess is that the team is probably valued around $1.5 billion today. So if you think about it, the team was bought for $175 million in 2009, 2010. Now it's worth $1.5 billion. Toto Wolff owns 1/3 of the team. It's owned by 1/3. Toto Wolff is 33%. The German brand that owns Mercedes, the parent company, owns 33%. And Ineos, the chemical company of Jim Ratcliffe, owns 33%. So Toto Wolff's stake went from a valuation of essentially $30 million to $500 million today. Now, Forbes doesn't break down exactly what makes up his billion-dollar net worth. That's obviously the biggest part, but he has a bunch of other investments too. He owns a driver management company. He has a big minority equity investment in Aston Martin, along with Lawrence Stroll, and a bunch of other stuff outside of that. So it is undoubtedly true that Toto Wolff is one of the most powerful people in Formula One today. If you zoom out and you just look at the investment in totality, he essentially made a $30 million bet on Formula One and the Mercedes Formula One team, turned that into $500 million. That does not count his $20 million plus annual salary, all the bonuses that he got for winning the championships and so forth. And like I said, it's extremely, extremely, extremely impressive. And that's exactly how Toto Wolff became a billionaire.